Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for the conversation that we are going to have today. We're going to dive into a cool study that just came out. So what I love about studies like this is that it is timely. It is new. It came out and received in February of 24 and published in March of 2024. And it is in the Journal of Nutrients. It is Time-Restricted Eating and Bone Health, a systematic review with meta-analysis. It's like the first time I've ever read a title to an article. So if you are new to the Fasting for Life podcast, time-restricted eating, aka fasting, and bone health is the conversation that we're going to have today. We want to give you one or two actionable things that you can do to put into your fasting lifestyle today. No need to wait. We want to be on this fasting lifestyle transformation or this journey with you. So if you're new, welcome in. You want to know more about Tommy, myself, our story, how fasting transformed our lives, how we ended up here 240 plus episodes in, millions of downloads later, delivering weekly episodes, coaching, challenges, all the resources on the website, all of that came out of our own personal journey with insulin resistance, blood sugar issues, metabolic conditions, and fasting was our solution. So, OGs, if you've been listening with us for a while, we'd love to hear from you. We also love to hear from you anyone in the form of 5-star reviews. Those are our favorite. We just broke 1,000 reviews.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, gratitude to you guys being on this journey with us and listening. We had no idea the reach or the impact that our story could have had, a few years back. And just so grateful for each and every one of you listening in. Obviously, we're being a little cheeky with the 5-star review thing, but luckily we have lots of those. So that tells us that we're at least listening and delivering good content for the majority, right? You're not going to make everybody happy, but we are happy that you are here today. And Tommy, we're going to unpack a conversation, and we hear this often inside of coaching is, can fasting help with blank?
Can it fix my blank?
Can it fix my blank, right? I thought you said, can you kiss my blank? I was like, whoa, hold on. Wait a minute. This is a PG podcast, right? We don't have the explicit rating, right?
Let's keep it family friendly around here.
Right? You can listen into the car with your kids and bore them to death, but at least hopefully you'll get something out of it. So can you fix my blank?
Yeah. Can blank disease process or some other ailment or symptom be reversed through fasting? And the answer to many of those questions is yes, maybe, or yes, possibly, if, or here's another, list of questions and individual concerns and things like that. And also maybe it depends. So the interesting thing about bones and bone mineral density is that, you have a lot of different potential aging related concerns. There are also obviously many different disease related processes that come along with bones and bone density. But they're actually very intricately related to metabolic processes and sensitive to insulin and the whole cascade that revolves around insulin sensitivity, resistance, metabolic health, cardiometabolic health, as well as obviously physical musculature and your skeletal structure that are heavily dependent on your weight, your physical activity. Weight loss can have a dramatic effect on bone mineral density, also musculature too, depending on how you do it, how long it takes you, how long have you been trying to lose the weight. All of these kind of things kind of get rolled up into part of this conversation. But the cool thing is we haven't seen many studies at all that have looked specifically at bone mineral density, bone quality, bone health with regard to time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. We've had our own inklings and our own, hey, this is what this research study shows, and this might be a good indicator, but it's going to need further study. We've had a lot of those kind of moments with regard to bone density, osteoporosis, and other bone and skeletal structure kind of concerns. But this is really, really cool, groundbreaking stuff that we haven't seen studied this way before.
And they actually say that in the paper. So it's a meta-analysis, right? So they went through a rigorous selection criteria, and they looked at all of the data that was out there. And one of the other things we also hear, though, Time, before I forget, is, people that have had issues, and as you start to lose the weight and you use fasting as the tool to get you there, right? This is a fasting lifestyle podcast, right? We want you to apply fasting to recharge your life, reverse conditions, improve your health, lose weight once and for all, etc.
Yeah.
That's the vehicle that's going to get you there. So the on the opposite side of the can fasting help me with blank is are the concerns about what fasting can do to those metabolic processes, to your overall health. Like if we go back a few months ago when the red meat controversy came out, eating red meat leads to all-cause mortality increase. Well, not really. That wasn't even a research study. It was case studies, anecdotal data, right? And what I'm going to share now is in the same vein. We've had lots of folks, once they lose some weight and they start focusing on body composition and longevity metrics, which is not the initial focus when you start a new diet or a new lifestyle, right? Is not typically anyway, is, we talk about DEXA scans and full body MRIs and looking at the body composition, that muscle composition, right? As we age, you need more protein to prevent muscle loss. So one of the questions we hear, we have these situations where people will see osteopenia reverse and osteoporosis improve and prevention of these things. So we have these being told to us from folks that have adopted a fasting lifestyle. Yeah. And
my DEXA scan looks better now than it ever has before.
Yeah, my DEXA is great. Like my visceral fat's down, my lean tissue and bone density is up. So we're going to talk about a few of those things here. But the underlying concern is on the opposite of can fasting help with my blank is, can fasting harm X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, great point.
And that's why we wanted to talk about the specific study, is because the benefits, and they do say small studies, there's not a lot of research out there, less than 5 specifically we'll talk about BMD versus BMC, and what all that means. But I love that they were coming from the perspective of, what is time restricted eating, or what do those fasting windows look like? And then ultimately, what is that doing to our bone mineral density? Is it having a detrimental effect? And the main takeaway is no, it's absolutely not.
Yeah, not if we do it the right way. But there have been plenty of research studies done in the past on losing weight, just losing weight, and caloric deficits and bone mineral composition or bone mineral density, and the potential, the oftentimes found negative effects on that. And so those have been attributed to things like, okay, overall skeletal frame deloading, mechanical deloading, where you're a lighter version of yourself. So you're not stimulating the muscles and the bones in the same way. And thus you can have a decomposition happening, just a change in bone mineral density because there's less physical stimulation, less having to defy the force of gravity, basically, because you're a lighter version of yourself. And so, but that wasn't necessarily attributed to, okay, could they be losing weight in the wrong way? Or is this just a natural part of the process? Because there are some studies that show people in the overweight or obese category having higher levels of bone mineral density. And so it was thought, okay, well, maybe that's because they have a greater skeletal load. And so that deloading and loading, kind of theory happens right there. And so when we take a look at, okay, a caloric deficit versus a time restricted eating, even if we end up with a net overall caloric deficit during intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, we have a hormonal cascade that's very different from long-term high insulin, low calorie environment going over towards time restricted eating, doing intermittent fasting and fast cycling in a very strategic way that tends to give better, more optimal physiological and hormonal signals while we're actually taking the weight off? And can we get the weight off faster so that we don't have to stay in a long-term low and slow caloric deficit that is allowing for ample time for the body to kind of adapt to that caloric and energetic environment too, which tends to be negative over time as well, the longer it goes on.
And they say this in the discussion too. Studies included in our review are in line with previous evidence showing the beneficial effects of time-restricted eating on body weight and fat mass. Considering this, though, the most remarkable finding of this present review is that there were no harmful effects on bone health markers despite the reduction in body weight and fat mass.
Excellent.
Right? So in contrast with our findings, other dietary strategies for weight loss have been related to detrimental effects on bone health, i.e. changes in bone turnover markers and reductions in bone mass density and bone mass composition, BMD or BMC, respectively. So consequently, TRE might emerge as a potential approach for weight loss without a negative impact on bone health, at least in the short term.
Wow.
So this is when we look at, we're not osteoporosis specialists, right?
Of course,
That's not what we do. So when you look at the complexity, you were just speaking to some of these things about osteoporosis, much like obesity, it's multifactorial, right? It's a complex thing. So TREs become more popular fasting because of the beneficial effects on weight loss and simplicity. So like it's like we almost wrote this article, no need to count calories or food restrictions, or, there's this, plateau breaking type, this cardiometabolic improvement application with fasting with TRE. But there's a really big complexity in regards, I don't want to minimize the complexity of osteoporosis or osteopenia, because there are, factors include in these different categories that affect it, like gut microbiome, nutrient availability, inflammation, oxidative stress components, circadian rhythm alignment that can help with bone metabolism, meaning sleep-wake cycles, meaning a healthy sleep, a healthy stress response.
Great point.
So there's all these different things, but interestingly is that TRE has shown to have positive effects on all of those. So are we saying there's a direct correlation? No, but what we've seen is that what we can say from this study is that it is not detrimental. Even if it comes back neutral, you're still going to get.
That's important.
Yeah, right? You're still going to get, and we'll go over the results from this study, the additional benefits of TRE without what Tommy said a few minutes ago, without the evidence that you will have bone mass density or bone BMC or BMD affected through other weight loss strategies. And that's really powerful because osteoporosis, we're talking about, we'll share a stat here in a second, in one of the studies where you saw a 27% increase or decrease, in bone mass density, bone mineral density, in the femoral head. Well, guess what? Hip fracture.
Yeah.
We know the stats on hip fracture.
Yeah.
Right? Not good.
Yeah. The clinical significance of that is huge for so much of the population. And, just the fact that we get to see a neutral result here is like, that's incredible, because if we're talking about a way to restrict energy coming into the body so that we can have time to burn through some of those long-term fat stores, the immediate clinical concern would be that, hey, if we're going too long without bringing in nutrients, we're going to be going too long without bringing in minerals as well. And thus we're going to be either stealing from the bone that we have or robbing it of new nutrients and new minerals that need to come in order for, proper, bone structuring, bone cycling. The bones are usually thought of as kind of a static tissue, as just like a skeletal structure that's just kind of there. And it's just static, but it's absolutely not static. It's consistently breaking itself down and rebuilding in a constantly cyclical kind of manner. So just the fact that if we're going through these periods of time where we're restricting energy for one beneficial, effect, whether it's weight loss or just overall physiological optimizing and just overall health, it's amazing. It's fantastic to know that we're not having a negative effect on bone.
And that percentage that I shared earlier with the femoral neck, the bone mineral density changes, and that percentage change, that came from a study in women with type 2 diabetes, right? Who'd recently initiated the use of insulin. And that's where we saw the more rapid BMD loss.
Okay.
Right. So if we are then extrapolating that, and I know we're taking some, we're filling in some gaps here, but the way we think about this,
dots.
yeah, in a nuanced way is, all right, well, if we have insulin resistance, it's something our medical system doesn't typically, test for. If you want to figure out a subjective way, you can go take our insulin assessment that's on the website. You can just thefastingforlife.com, boom, under resources, it's there. You can get your fasting insulin tested, right? HOMA IR, gold standard insulin resistance, but a lot of the times it's not ordered. You have to pay for it, or you have to request it and kick and scream until you get it, or go off on your own and find it. Right. So if you have elevated insulin or a dysfunction in your metabolic process of your insulin sensitivity at this tissue cell or the production in the pancreas due to metabolic issues, then we're going to have elevated or dysfunctional insulin in our body. Well, guess what? The studies show that if you start taking insulin, you have a direct effect on the femoral neck bone BMD.
Yeah, the density of it. Wow.
So we're not administering it, but we are increasing the frequency and the duration or the area under the curve by our lifestyle. By our sleep, by our stress, and by our food and food relationships. And that's where fasting can become such a powerful tool to remove that stimulus of insulin, right? Not in the type 2 diabetes study, but there's studies in this in type 1 diabetes too, that this is an increased concern, and considerable increase when you look at the percentages, right? Not just a small increase, but like huge changes. Interestingly enough, that study didn't show any changes in the spine, but it did show the changes in the hip, which again, we already talked about. So looking at this from a fasting perspective, like if I'm listening to this, I'm going, okay, well, if I have concerns about this and the study says, well, there's really no long-term data, but we have the case studies and what we've seen in our group and our own personal experiences, right? What is a safe place to start? Well, this study looked at all the studies that were included. We're looking at a 16-8 fasting window, right? 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of nutrients, right? And we don't like to call it, we like to call it a nutrient opportunity, a nutrient window rather than a feeding window, an eating window. Right. Because you want to focus on getting in quality minerals, quality nutrients. We know we want to get away from the sugary stuff, the more refined processed foods. We want to be eating whole foods and getting our calcium and our nutrients from our food, and then also from trace mineral supplementation. Yeah,
good protein sources. When you start to be able to look at those as nutrition opportunities, that has a direct effect on your food quality, on how you're looking at your next eating opportunity. Because I can't emphasize it enough that the longer you're going through periods of energy restriction, of time restriction eating, and of intermittent fasting or longer fasting too. When you go to break your fast, that means that what you're bringing in when you break your fast is all that more important. Because if you're bringing in lower quality food or less intentional food, but you're doing it more often, it's like throwing something at the wall and just kind of seeing what sticks. You have more opportunities. I'm bringing in more different varied foods, and it's more likely that enough calories are going to come in. The right minerals might be coming in just kind of randomly. You have more opportunities for that, and you might be getting that right for more of your tissue some of the time, even if you're in a caloric a caloric balance or a caloric surplus as well.
Right.
So when you're going into a deficit or these longer times without energy coming in, without food coming in, then it really matters whenever we go to break those fasts, that's an opportunity for us to be bringing in good intentional nutrition so that we're feeding, all of the tissues in the body as well as we possibly can.
So I want to make sure this is applicable to everybody that's listening, right? Because some of you are going, well, I'm not a woman, I don't have type 2 diabetes, and I'm not on insulin. Okay, great. Good, neither am I. So when we're looking at the studies, 16-8, eating the fasting window, 12 to 8 p.m. Self-selected eating window from 10 to 11 a.m. to 6 to 7 p.m. Eating window from 12 to 8. This is the classical skip breakfast model so far, right? 16-8 self-selected. Eating from 10 to 6, right? So it's a little bit later of a window. Midday window, 8-16-8 self-selected, then a 12-12, which we don't even consider fasting,
right?
To be honest. So in these groups, however, these were overweight, obese, overweight, obese, greater than one component of metabolic syndrome, or there was one group which is endurance trained runners, which was really cool. And then they had a weight scoring system on all these different studies. So if you're like, okay, well, I don't have insulin. Well, okay. Are you in the overweight category or are you in the obese category? Do you have 20, 30 pounds to lose? Well, this fasting strategy then can be a sustainable place to start your weight loss journey, but also protecting that bone mineral density. So the results. Most individuals assigned to TRE interventions achieve significant weight loss and positive changes in body composition, including decreased fat mass, percentage of body fat, and visceral fat, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Despite significant weight loss, there were no harmful effects on bone health markers. Bone mineral density, bone mineral content, and bone turnover markers. All studied. Lean mass. Studies reported lean mass showed a non-significant reduction. Studies reporting lean mass showed a non-significant reduction in lean mass, except for one study where participants maintained lean mass, possibly due to concurrent training. Well, if you're working on bone mineral density or bone mineral content, you are going to want to have resistance training as part of your weekly routine. So people think, I got to lift weights. That's kind of, maybe I'm in my 60s and I've got a DEXA scan that's gave me some results that I don't really like, and I fall into the category of osteopenia, or now we're talking about all these different other therapies, or maybe I've been on hormone replacement therapy before and there's all these considerations and my mind's going crazy.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. You can literally start by walking. Tommy, you and I had a conversation about weighted vests.
Yeah.
Right before we hopped on to do this podcast, right? It's a simple, effective way. We have someone that's going across a hiking trip, I believe in Europe.
Yeah.
Training to go and up the miles each week wearing an 18-pound sack, right? You can call it rucking. I don't think the weekend warrior ruckers would fall into the same category as the professionals, right?
Sure, of course.
Doing the hiking trails and
but put a few pounds, put a couple of cans in a backpack, start there. You can always, increase a little bit, or, put a few bottles of water. Just keep it simple, but you can, but I especially like to think about it as I drop a few pounds, I become a lighter version of myself. You can make up for that lack of muscular and skeletal pull of gravity right there just by supplementing it back in when you go on your daily walk. So 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes or a little bit longer if you tend to go a little bit longer. I mean, that's a great way to fight the kind of the aging effect and the lightening of my frame effect on what it has to do with my bone and my musculature.
And these were all mostly 12-week studies. There was one 24-week study and a couple of 8-week studies. So just like if you've listened to the episode 1 of this podcast, Tommy and I were our own guinea pigs, right? Multiple degrees, doctorates, masters in physiology. We're like, well, okay, well, I'm not working. This isn't working. I'm doing all the things. It's not do something new. I got to do something new. So why not get a DEXA scan, implement some new strategies, right? If you're doing 16-8, do a 24. If you're doing OMAD, add in some extended fast. If you want some guidance on some fasting schedules that we use, we see great results with, you can grab the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss in the show notes. It's a free 20-page PDF. Put in your email, we'll send it to you. Right? So do it, stick to your plan for 90 days and go get a retest. See where you're at. See if you move the needle.
And when you get that DEXA scan, don't just do the bone density, but do the visceral fat as well. Get them both in there, and so then you can compare that in maybe 3 months, 6 months, as you kind of go through your fasting journey, and you'll have a really good reference point right there for both things.
100%, 100%. So when we're looking at the application in terms of big picture, there were a couple of limitations because there were some small sample sizes. There was not a lot of studies to be able to compare, or RCTs, for longer, fasting interventions. Bone remodeling, takes longer times, right? It's not just an overnight process. It's typically 3 to 6 months for that entire bone remodeling process to take place.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure we're standing on the foundation of where we started, which is, can fasting help with blah, 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 XYZ? That was very professional, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Seinfeld fans. Or can it hurt XYZ, right? So it did not have detrimental effects on bone health, despite the reduction in body weight and fat mass.
Mm-hmm.
So can fasting be a proven strategy right now in RCTs? No. Is it a negative? Not so far. And absolutely, based on what we've seen, and what results that we've seen inside of coaching and people that have done before and after DEXA scans, the effects are positive. So small changes add up, especially keeping the fasting schedule simple, keeping your workout routine schedule. You can do vibration platforms, etc. These are all things that you can do to have a positive effect. Whole food choices, salt supplementation, trace mineral supplementation. These are all simple things that you can put in, that can apply to this situation.
Yeah, and just the fact that there's no longer term studies on more extended fasts, which I would love to see, and hopefully we can see that someday too. But that's another reason why, hey, if you have weight to lose, but then also you're concerned about bone density, then focus on those shorter fasting cycles, getting those right. And as you get more of your food choices right and your plates balanced out, you're going to have a faster effect on what's happening on the scale without necessarily needing to go into the more extended fast. So does it have a few more things that you're going to need to get right if you have less tools in your fasting tool belt? Sure, but you can still feel like there are tools that you can use to get there. And so that's a cool thing. So, getting started with the blueprint to fasting for fat loss and just getting some reps there, I think is going to be incredible to get going in the right direction towards, really good physiology, really good ideal body weight and body composition, as well as being bone protective and, working on that bone density that's so important, especially as we age.
Yeah. And so I just want to highlight one more component as we wrap up of this study's discussion. And I love their come from, right? When we started the conversation today. But it really speaks to the review showing that most individuals in the TRE interventions achieve significant weight loss, positive changes in body composition related to decreased fat mass, percentage of body fat, and visceral fat compared to those in the non-TRE interventions and the pre-TRE interventions. Yeah. So there were 2 additional studies where the significant weight loss was only in the intergroup for TRE, one of them a crossover design RCT, in which participants assigned to TRE maintain their body mass, so no weight loss, still benefit.
Yeah.
Body composition changes.
Nice.
And there was also another group where they saw an increase in lean muscle tissue, and that was due to the strength training regimen that was part of that TRE study. So those studies are right here cited, with the additional benefits. Concurrent exercise training reduces fat mass, effects of time restricted feeding and walking. Right. We just did an episode on breaking up your walks last week, where we talked about 3-minute bouts of walking or 3-minute bouts of squats.
Yeah.
Where you can activate the quads and the glutes, which will then increase your insulin sensitivity and your metabolic function of your muscle cells. So it'll increase the activity of the GLUT4 receptors and your insulin production and insulin effectiveness. Right. So just big picture, absolutely love this conversation, because this has been something that we've been asked dozens of times. And we've always said, well, this is what we feel, but now we have some solid rock that we can stand on, at least from a initial fasting perspective. that it's not harmful, and we believe that it can absolutely be helpful.
Yeah. Come from that protective mechanism and protective physiology here, and getting the weight off without just being in that plateau, low and slow, long drawn out, higher insulin but low calories, because that's when you get into some of the where are the nutrients going anyway, because imbalanced physiology when insulin is high, but especially when calories are low, then it's a bit of a crapshoot as far as which tissue gets affected like that. So, let's get the weight off. Let's get some let's get the reps in so we can do that and make the progress, and then we can continue focusing on really, really good nutrition during our eating opportunities. And that's how we find the right balance to get the right result, and fix my reverse my XYZ or optimize my XYZ that I'm looking for.
So what's the best fasting schedule? What's the best diet? What's the best financial strategy? Well, the one you can stick to, right? And that's why we always talk about lifestyle adaptation. So we want you to pick one or two things that you can do today. If it's the blueprint, if it's joining the Facebook group, if it's joining an upcoming Master Your Fast, 7-day Master Your Fasting challenge. No, it is not a 7-day fast. We go through intermittent fasting schedules to move the needle, to break the plateaus, to support you. If you want to accelerate that learning curve, come on in. The water's warm. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Just excited, Tommy. Really excited for this study. Excited for what it's going to do for some of our coaching clients, and hopefully have an impact on all of the other listeners as well. All right.
Yeah.
As we wrap up today, head to the show notes, find the resource, the link you're looking for. Tommy, appreciate the conversation as always, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.